Okay, so thank you for joining tonight's class or for watching this as a recording. Much appreciated. It's the 23rd of September 2021. So this is our Thursday evening class and the subject is watching the watcher. Watching the watcher. Right, so why bother? Why bother watching the watcher? What does that even mean? Well, it's really quite profound actually. And when it happens, it's quite simple. Very subtle and simple meditation. So watching the watcher. What normally happens is that we have our senses and we're aware that there's appearance. Now, philosophically, we can go down a real rabbit hole of what's the nature of reality. Buddhists, Hindus, Sufis, contemplative monks, all sorts of traditions and philosophies have discussed, what's the, where's the tree? Is the tree in the mind or is the tree outside? What is the nature of the tree? And it can get very subtle and complicated. But basically, what we're aware of is that there's appearance. We can't dispute that. There's not nothingness. There's appearance. So there's the senses. There's what appears to be external stuff, and there's the senses that receive that information. So let's take the visual sense. So there's appearance of things to the eyes, there's the eyes, and then there's the inside of this, which can be perceived that there's a mind in here. Behind the eyes, when we check, sort of in here, behind here is the sense of a person. You pop the eyes out and have a little poke around in there. There's no person. There's no little hand grabs my finger if I put my finger in there. There's no little hand. There's no little paw in there. But it feels like there's a person in here, a me, an I, a self, a Paul. So even though thoughts come and go, as we notice as meditators, and even though feelings come and go and are momentary, thoughts are momentary. Every cell in our body regenerates, according to science, every 6 weeks or so. And if we look on a microscopic level, each atom is constantly changing. It feels in here, between the eyes, that there's a 51-year-old. There's a 51-year-old. Well, if I'm honest, in here it feels like there's an 18-year-old. That's a different story. There's a 51-year-old, and that 51-year-old is watching things going on. Is perceiving and watching things going on. So generally, our focal point for the experience seems to be just behind the eyes, and there's a meditator meditating, and they're doing it. He, she, they are doing it behind the eyes. Now, so you've got the objects, you've got the sideways. You've got the objects, you've got the I, you've got the sense of a self in here, and then there's spaciousness that can watch that observer, observing the information that's coming from the eyes or coming from visualization or an experience in meditation. So there's the capacity for the focal point to move more spacious through relaxing. If we are very, very stressed, very angry or anxious, behind our eyes it gets tight. Our mind, literally in there, our mind feels tight and it can relax and tighten. And it's not obvious when our mind's busy, but as we meditate for a while, we can start to notice this relaxation and this tension exactly the same as if we were to do it in our fists. It feels the same. It's relaxation and it's tension behind the eyes. And the tighter that is, the more tied to this area being the focal point from which everything is experienced. When it relaxes, our mind relaxes out and there's a sense of space that can observe, that witnesses, that bears witness to the sense of what's going on in here, experiencing what's going on out. So we're just coming back steps. So we can't do this. I don't think we can do this with a tight, tense mind. I can't anyway. As soon as my mind goes tense, the the spatial awareness just goes in time, it relaxes out. Which is why it's handy to do this as part of a meditation process where we relax the mind, relax the mind, relax the mind, and then relax it out. The observer. Now, the observer can't observe itself. You know, the eyeball can't look inside itself. So if we're saying, like, I really want to experience this stillness that everything arises with it. I really want to, I've got to find it. You know, I wish it would happen to me. It's never going to happen because the mind's got tight. So it's like a tight hand wanting to be relaxed, really stressing at being relaxed. So it's almost like a, I don't know if you've ever done one of these trust falls. Sort of seems to have come out of the 60s, American personal development sort of scene where somebody's behind you and you fall back and they hold you. It's an exercise in letting go. It's a similar thing with this meditation. We just let it ease out. Almost like a surrender. I've never seen anybody describe it this way, and I don't know why. I don't know whether what I've just done is really unskillful or skillful, but it seems to me that there can't be much harm in explaining how I experience it. What I don't want to have done is made a rule that this is how you must do it. So this is an invitation to try what I do, to try what's worked for me. And if that doesn't work, then that's fine, or you can carry on and do it several times or whatever. But there are videos online of all sorts of people who teach this, and it comes up as non-duality. It gets called non-duality, it gets called in Buddhism Rigpa, various different names for it. Sometimes people call it consciousness, this stillness, they call it consciousness. And sometimes people call it the self, the real self, the true self. Now, this stillness that watches things, it watches the appearance and it watches what's going on in the mind. And it can watch that the mind produces thoughts such as, I am 51, or I'm great, or I am rubbish, or I am Paul, or I'm not doing this very well, or what the hell's going on? That stillness watches these thoughts come and go. And the thought, this stillness is me, is a thought that happens within that stillness. It is not the stillness, it arises from it. So we can put salt in water. If I had a cup of water, water's not probably left it outside, but if I have a cup of water and pour salt in it and swill it round, I say there's salty water, but actually there's still salt and still water. And I can boil off, you know, we've done it in chemistry. You boil off the water and you're left with the salt. They were always separate. We can't say the salt is the water. We can't say that the thought, I am the stillness, is the stillness. For some reason, what seems to happen is that stillness arises, the conceptual mind goes, I found me, this is me, which are just thoughts. And then it grabs at that and grabs at, I found the self. And as far as I'm concerned, and this is contentious, I don't know why it's contentious, but it will be found to be contentious. Hinduism does this. Hinduism says we found God, we found self. Anything we decide has been found is a thought happening in the stillness. It's a projection, it's an addition. Because that stillness has nothing to say. It has nothing to say. It has no arguments with anything. It has no agenda. It has no gender. It's not male or female. It's not human. It's not actually human because there's no self in there. It's prior to thought. It's prior to conception and idea. It's just stillness. lives, and I don't feel any compulsion to label it. It's prior to label. I can just accept that and experience it. So that's my offer to you, is to help be guided, relax. If the focal point does relax out from the watcher into the watching of the watcher, tonight's class, then you'll see that there's no labeling in there. There's no flavor, there's no smell, there's no taste in there. So as soon as my mind goes, that was XXX, that stillness can watch that. That stillness can watch that stuff. But as soon as the focal point comes back behind the eyes tight, the stories start going. Our lives are stories. Somebody else has got a different story about us. They perceive a different Paul, a different story about me. I have a story about me, about my upbringing and what I like and what I don't like. And I've got this story. As soon as it gets tighter behind here, this tighter mind loves a story. It absolutely loves a story, because a story makes it feel like there's a concrete me. He wants to protect, not be challenged, and be cherished, and be loved, and to be liked, and to be stroked. You know, that goes on in here, and actually, it travels down here as well to the heart. So that this sense of a self gets offended, gets insulted, we tighten up in here. We feel tight in our heart. We feel anxiety, stress, upset, hurt. In me, there are two places where this happens. It happens up and down a passageway in here, and it tightens around the face. It will get really indignant in here, then the face feels tight, almost like there's a mask on of anger or indignation, or probably one of the strongest feelings people say they feel, and I've felt, is that unfairness, unjustness. If something is unjust, doesn't it cut us? It really tightens our mind, unjustness. And it can tighten around the face. So this meditation is a step back. It's a freedom. It provides a freedom to step back and look at all of that. If we have a dream and we realize we're dreaming, all the fear falls away. When we go to a cinema, or we watch a film on the TV or on our tablets or phones or whatever, we want to be deluded. We're paying to be deluded, because our mind starts to invest in the characters who are actually just patterns of dots on a screen. And we love it. They take us on a journey through an adventure or a crime or who knows what, an experience. But they're just dots on a screen. If we go, this film's terrifying. You know, we want to be scared in a scary film, a horror movie. We're absorbed into it. We're feeling that fear. And so he says, it's only a film. It might jolt us out to that moment, and we might feel disappointed that somebody's jolted us out of it, spoiled the moment. So we know that we choose delusion. We know that we choose that for entertainment purposes. But we also experience delusion as a deep suffering. Because we think there's a person in here. And when we watch in the stillness further back, somebody's just popped in called Joseph or Zach. I don't know who that is. So I'm going to admit them. If it's someone we know using a different account, great. If it's a Zoom bomber, be first. Right. I'm just going to pause the recording and check who's just come into the class, and then we'll carry on with the meditation. I finished teaching, so we'll do the meditation. Sure. Okay, so the body relaxation, the breathing meditation, and then we'll do the watching the watcher meditation. So I will pause so that we have this as a shorter video for listening to, watching it back, so that we don't go through the body breathing meditation every single time. So I'll pause and then start. So if you're doing this at home and you want to do a preliminary practice, such as breathing meditation or some yoga or something else, and then when your mind has relaxed down a little bit in here and loosened, then you can come and do the second meditation with us. That works really well. If you want to just jump straight in and follow on this recording, please do, but please be aware that if you're doing it with a mind that's quite tight from a busy day, it's harder to relax it. Maybe give it a go and see. Okay, so the second meditation, hope you've enjoyed your first one in today's class live, or if you're doing this recorded, then hope you enjoyed your preliminary practice, and if you didn't do one, then enjoy this next part. This stillness can only really be pointed to in another. We can't have a lobotomy and literally move the focal point out. We can't do that, you know. Can't blow it up like a balloon to expand it, to relax it. And for you, it may be very simple. You may feel like, what the hell's Paul describing? What's going on? If you catch that, then that's the mind getting tighter. So that's the paradox. We can't think our way into this. We can relax become aware of the presence. We just become aware of that stillness through relaxing the mind. Yeah, relaxing our concentration. So rather than thinking me, I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean just process, info, think. Relax back. So I'll guide this. If you want to get yourself comfortable, close your eyes. See if you can tighten your mind behind your eye. Well, before we do that, just notice the center of perception is behind the eyeballs, not at the back of the knee or the top of the leg. It's behind the eyeballs. No, if it's not for you, then that's fascinating, that's interesting, but what I've seen, it's usually the case that it's behind the eyes in the middle. The more upset we get, or indignant, or craving, the tighter this gets, the more difficult it gets to relax it. I'd like you to think in your mind 2 + 2 = 4, and see where that seems to occur. Think 2 + 2 = 4, see where that seems to occur. Does it occur just behind the eyes? Is it in a wider space? Does it pervade the whole universe? Like, think of an apple. Imagine an apple. Not everyone can picture images in their mind, so don't worry if you can't, but you can. Imagine picturing an apple in your mind. Where does this occur? We conceive of things. We conceive of an apple. We perceive things through our senses. We seem to do it just behind the eyes. I'd like to stay relaxed. Bring your awareness to the fact that this presence, this observation, this observer seems to just behind the eyes. Just come back to this simple fact, awareness. So we can be this presence, we can be this consciousness in the head. Now, very gently, just acknowledge that you know this is happening, that there is the knowing that there is a watcher. If I say to you, is there a sense of a meditator? Then the answer is yes, there's a sense of a meditator. We can only know this because it's being perceived, it's being. So very gently just become aware as the observer, the meditator. Just gently become the presence that knows there's a meditator. Or initially, the meditator becomes aware of the space around it, within the head. There's infinite space around this sense of the self. So in my experience, the meditator can be aware of this space around this part of the mind, the vast space, infinite space of the mind. But there can be a switch whereby the vast space looks at the sense of a meditator behind the eyes. It's aware of this process of consciousness behind the eyes. See if your mind can relax deeply behind the eyes. Relax out, imagine awareness expands, relaxes and eases back, further back than the eyeballs, further and further back. Stillness. With your awareness to this stillness. Everything arises within this stillness, thoughts, images, sense of meditator, sense of observing. If you're not sure, picture, say, an apple again. Become aware that there's the sense of an observer of the apple. Gently examine how there can be this knowledge that there's observation of the apple. artist observes the observer. So anybody who's doing this, who's got Buddhist experience, this stillness can watch the rising of ignorance, the absence of ignorance, which is wisdom. So the self, no self, sunyata, what to call it, the tightening of the mind, the loosening of the mind, can observe ignorance occurring and the lack of ignorance. And this stillness is unchanged by any of these observations. This is how Hinduism and Buddhism can be reconciled and understood together as non-contradictory. To experience this rather via interfaith understanding. So we can fake it to make it. If you haven't experienced this yet, it's a little bit confusing for the last minute. Just imagine that the mind expands. There's a stillness all around it. Become aware of this like you would the sensations of the ribs of the nostrils. Just imagine there's pure stillness around the observing mind, witnessing mind. Just come back to that if the mind wanders away. Imagine what it would be like for this consciousness in behind the eyes to be suspended in pure stillness around it. Stillness comes all the way down to your heart, your stomach, your loins. It embraces everything. So what is it that knows that you're meditating? If I ask you, have you been meditating? You say yes. What knew that? So for the last 30 seconds, relax. Check what it is. What is this that knows that you're meditating right now? You can answer this question. What is it that knows that the perception seems to be behind the eyes? So if you've experienced the stillness, or you've been able to generate an image of the stillness, faking it to make it, for the final 30 seconds, we're just going to rest. But that's either as the stillness or aware of the stillness. If the mind wanders away, just come back to this experience. before we come out of meditation, we can dedicate the effort we've relaxed observation we've applied to profound practice to for stillness recognizing itself. We can dedicate this to all living beings. May everyone be the stillness. May everyone recognize themselves as the stillness. May the stillness recognize itself. However it needs to happen, may that happen. When it feels comfortable, just gently allow your eyes to open. Thank you for joining in tonight's class.